Good morning, everyone, and Om Shanti. On behalf of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center of Connecticut, a warm welcome to all of you on this beautiful July morning. I know we have not been together in the last 2 weeks, and so we're very happy to bring to you a whole series of creative, innovative, and very thought-provoking workshops today through the rest of the summer. And so we're so happy to see all of you. I know it's an intimate group, but we're excited to have you with us. And so let's talk about today's workshop. So today's workshop is laying the foundation of true love in relationships. And let's talk a little bit about our facilitator. So our facilitator, who you see in front of you, is Kanupriya Moore, who we call either Sister Kanupriya or Kanupriya Ben, just out of respect. So she resides at Peace Village, which is the Brahma Kumaris Retreat and Learning Center in upstate New York in the Catskill Mountains. But if I could describe Kanupriya Ben to you, just on the time I've known her, is what I always call an image of solutions. Always has a gentle nature. When you meet her, you feel like you've been friends for like a lifetime. That's how close she brings you to her. She just creates that naturalness of familiarity, but also just like exudes or like just shines with love, and is always just, whenever I see her, I automatically smile. And so I always appreciate these qualities about Kanupriya Ben, because she's a true example for like ways that I'm like, oh, I want to be like that. And so she inspires me all the time whenever I see her. And so I would like to welcome Kanupriya Ben to be our facilitator for today's workshop. And I'd also like to welcome all of you for being with us today on your Saturday morning. And so welcome to all of you, and let's get started.
Thank you, Sister Nelisha, and a big hello to everyone. So good to be back, and I'm amazed how Nelisha Ben finds out qualities that even I'm not aware about. So I'm sure they're all within her, and that's how she sees it in others too. And that is my experience with her. So thank you. They all are actually Nelisha's qualities, right? So thank you so much for making me feel part of the family. And today is a topic of personal interest to me as well. And it's not that, we will find all answers today, because I would like it to be like an interactive session, more discussions. And I'm also trying to figure out this topic of how to lay the foundation of true love in all our relationships. Of course, we'll be focusing more on relationships with human beings, but of course, we also know that we relate with nature and matter and objects and so on and so forth. But the fundamental principle, what is the fundamental principle of laying that foundation? And we all know if the foundation is right, then we don't have to work on so much on the building blocks, right? Or on the tree, so to say, right? The branches and the leaves. But if the seed or the foundation is right, then a lot of work is done already. And I would like to start with a quote from Robert Holden, who said that your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every other relationship you have. And sort of agree with this, this statement, because the more we start to think about, what our relationships, what is the state of our relationships currently. And I would like to use the board here. So, yeah. So if we were to see the state of our current relationships, right, we see that they are sort of not not at the right at the right space, right? Or we could call it they are even dysfunctional in a way. And the reason for that is, and I would like to explain this with an example. So let's say there is a husband and a wife, right? And so before marriage, they 2017 they got to know each other, and they kept meeting with each other, liking each other, getting to know each other, right? And then um, the husband kept uh, liking more and more things about uh, the fiance, and then they decided to get married, right? So 2018 they get to know each other, 2019 they get married, right? And he likes everything about her, and they are in love, right? And one day, what happens, few 1 year after marriage in 2020, the wife decides to change the color of her hair. So she comes home and with one side pink and one side green in color. So now the husband, what happens to the love and what happens to the relationship? So it started with love, but to notice within ourselves, what is the space that we are coming into the relationship, and what is the problem here? Is changing the color of the hair problem here? What is the, can anybody make out what is the real problem here?
You don't have to raise your hand. You could just unmute yourself. Patricia.
I think that maybe the real problem, if the hair is only a symbol or a symptom of what's happening in the relationship, but there has to be more to a relationship than liking somebody's hair. And I think the relationship started to deteriorate before she colored her hair pink. And as a marriage family therapist, I work with so many couples, and usually the bottom line is that neither one of them feels appreciated. So I think that probably what happened here is that before her hair was a different color, there were underlying issues in the relationship, and the color of hair just, was the tip of the iceberg, so to speak.
Yeah.
Leave a comment in the chat box from Summer that says surprise.
Surprise. Okay. All right. Okay.
I think it was change.
Change. Yeah.
Change is hard to accept.
Hard to accept change. And why is it hard to accept change?
Because I like things a certain way.
I like things a certain way. So I think, Sister Alicia, did you top your class every time in school and college?
Not always, but I talked a lot.
So, in other words, there is some kind of expectation, right? As we get into relationships, we sort of get into expectations for people to be a certain way. And why is that coming? Currently, if we see, all of us feel empty in a specific way, right? Or in some area or other, we feel some sort of emptiness. And we get into a relationship feeling that the other person will complete or that fill in that emptiness. So they say, that two people loving each other. And of course, here we are talking about marriage or whatever, and as an example, but it could be just about any other relationship also. So when we talk about getting into a relationship, it is more about one person completing the other person. But think about it. If we just take a step back and think about the fact that everybody today is feeling empty. There is emptiness in some sense or the other. And to think that the other person who's also feeling empty, to fill in some space within your emptiness, doesn't make sense, right? So the relationships get very complicated, and they end up being dysfunctional. So today we will try to address this issue of the foundation of love for the self, and also love for others, how that can be enabled easily when we love ourselves. So to love ourselves, we have to see the innate nature, the innate beauty of ourselves, to come into a space of fullness, to come into a space of richness of the heart and richness of the head, right? The more we start to experience that for the self, and of course, when we are referring to the self here, we are referring to this, not to the husband or the wife, or in my case, Kanupriya, but referring to this invisible being of light, the soul. So the more we get to know about the soul, experience the original of the soul, come into the original experience of the soul, we'll start to experience this inner fullness. And there is then there is sort of no need to get into a relationship where we are in a space of taking, right? Now, in this example, right, a husband and a wife, there was an expectation that, the wife should be a certain way and the hair should be a certain way, or whatever, right? Hair is just a very simple example. It could be the way she talks, the way she dresses, the way she, conducts herself, or even the way she cooks or whatever, right? The way she behaves. So we know, and we know it for sure. All of us know it, that that we cannot control anyone else. Can we? Everything around us, the whole world around us is unpredictable. It is changing, which is what Nalisha said, right? That change, we are not able to accept change. And one way for us currently in our ignorance, we can say that one way to fill in that sort of feeling of emptiness or some sort of insecurity that creeps in with that emptiness, we start to fill in that space by creating these expectations, and by trying to control others, trying to control everything around us. But the fact of the matter is, we cannot control anything else. Or anyone else. The only thing or person we can change or can control is ourselves, right? So by getting into this mode of, expectation from others, creating desires from others, right? And it may seem very simple, innocent, right? That, oh, how could she, color her hair pink? That's not right. That's not acceptable by society or whatever else, even by me. But this desire, as soon as we create this expectation, desire, we create a master for ourselves. What does a master mean? Master just means that there is a certain dependency, that the other person can dictate what kind of feelings we have based on their actions. So if they become masters, we as if sort of become beggars. That please don't color your hair, please leave the hair as they are, right? Then or please appreciate me. What Patricia was mentioning, that most couples look for praise, appreciation, validation, right? So some sort of, this inner what do you say, inner game is going on, that just a little bit, at least smile at me, say hello to me, right? So this sort of um, constant dialogue is going on between within us, that the other person, especially in relationships that we really value, the other person should behave the way we would like them to behave. And the moment we create this expectation, desire, we are creating a master, meaning to say that we are giving as if the remote control of our lives or our feelings and emotions in their hands. They decide to keep the hair color as black or brown or whatever, right? As it is, as natural, then we are happy. But the moment they start to change the color, as if our, the remote control, the other button on the remote control is pressed, and we start to feel sad, unhappy, disappointed, not cared for, right? Our value and opinion and so on and so forth. Yes, Patricia.
Just had a question, please. When you were talking about expectations, I was wondering about that in relation to, attachment. Because what I started thinking is, well, the more expectations you have and the more you want them fulfilled, doesn't that create more of an attachment?
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you might comment on that for me, please.
Yeah. So let us see, why this expectation or desire came about. And you're very right that there is a connection with attachment, or other words we use is bondage, or some kind of dependency that we are creating. And sometimes, or many times today, there is a confusion between what love is and what attachment is, right? So to know that whenever we are feeling some sort of true love comes from a space of absolute fullness, contentment. It is unconditional. It does not change if the hair color changes, right? So, or anything changes, right? So it is unconditional. It is uplifting always. And there is no feeling of that, the other person did something or didn't do something, and hence, I will stop giving. So that it is selfless, what we call selfless. It is not selfish, that it is because I want something a certain way. It is very freeing for the self, for the other as well. So these are few checking points for us to know whether we are loving someone out of attachment, or it is genuine true love that we are experiencing. And to understand this, this emptiness is the starting point. We said that this, for some reason, there is a point in our lives when we start to feel some emptiness. And because of that emptiness, we start to like something. It starts in a very subtle way. We start to like something. For example, I'll take an example of this chair that I'm sitting on. I just like the chair. It's a nice, comfortable chair. I like the chair. Nothing wrong, right? We feel that it's nothing wrong. But then that liking comes to a point where I start to really want the chair. That I start to feel that if I want to meditate or if I want to give a talk, then I need this chair. I want this chair. And then it gets into a state of that it becomes like a big desire that without this chair, I cannot do a talk or a meditation. I cannot do anything. So this sort of becomes like a downward spiral. The liking turns into need and want, and then it turns into a desire. And this desire is like a big bondage for us. As we saw, that as soon as we create a simple expectation, in the case of the wife and the husband, that their hair color should not change, it should be natural, then we have given the authority, given that we have created a master for ourselves, right? The one who can decide for how we are feeling. And we start to come into the state of being a beggar. So this is where attachment plays a big role. And what we see and what spiritual knowledge is telling us, that the more we come into the space of the fullness of the soul, and knowing that everything is unpredictable in this world, we cannot really control anything, anyone, and we are content with ourselves in our own company. If we can't enjoy our own company, then how can others enjoy our company? Just think about it. If we are not happy being by ourselves, then how can others experience happiness with us? So there is this very subtle function happening by feeling full. And how do we feel full? We can do a meditation practice also later on it, that when we start to discover the reality of this inner being of light, the soul, we start to know that this inner being of light is an immortal being. Immortal, does not die, does not change in any way. There is no beginning and no end. Does not actually need anything, right? Doesn't even need the body to exist, right? It is immortal. The body has a beginning and an end, but this living, conscient being of light is immortal. And it is the child of the Supreme Father, right? So, which is the source of true love. And the more we experience this unconditional love from the source, the more we start to come into our own original experience of being full of love. And that true love, which we said, which has all the qualities of, upliftment and no selfishness involved, selfless love, altruistic love, and never changing, that love sort of never changing. So the more we start to come into this state ourselves, we see that others also want to be in our company because we start to enjoy our own company. So to come into this state of fullness, contentment is very important. Now, this expectation and the bondage or attachment, it seems sometimes very obvious and actually justifiable even to us um, when we start to think about doing things for others, right? So if I'm in a space where um, you know um, I'm doing something good for others. So let us take an example of, say, there is a certain homeless man, right, sitting on the street, and I have made a very nice lunch for myself today, made out of a lot of care and love, right? But I see this homeless man while I'm crossing the street, and I decide that, let me do some good. Let me do a favor, some some act of goodness, and I give that lunchbox to him. And while doing that favor, there is, you know, what is there can be an expectation even at that level, right? Sometimes we think that we are doing things selflessly, but this expectation, especially from doing favors, when it starts to creep in, then just the simple expectation that that person should eat the food that I prepared, because I prepared with so much love and care. But, and this is a real story. So this homeless man, he opened the lunchbox. He looked at it. He cursed the food and he threw it in the garbage bin. Stranger, right? It's not that we know each other or anything like this. And so what do I feel? I sometimes, this expectation, I feel justified to have the expectation. Because I have done a favor, I feel that I deserve some kind of treatment. In this case, it was a simple expectation that someone should eat the food that I prepared with so much love and care. Now, after he did that, it just it it just didn't leave me hungry, but also angry, right? Because even if for a minute, right, until I come into this checking for myself, that what is it that is making me feel angry, or making me feel that that person I don't like anymore, someone I, out of love and care and wanting to help someone, I did a favor. And that happens with, I mean, if it can happen with a stranger like a homeless person, then it is very much happening all the time with us in our other relationships as well. So we have to be extremely careful when we are interacting with others, checking and working on ourselves first to see whether what space we are coming from. Are we coming from a space of fullness, or we are operating from a space of emptiness when we are in a relationship? Coming from a space of emptiness, it is all the time we are in this beggar mode. Give me, praise me. There is some sort of subconscious anxiety and panic going on, that why is that person not talking to me, why is that person not smiling at me. And sadness is experienced quickly. I mean, we can recognize it when we start to feel sad. Then there is a probability that we will see that we are in the beggar mode and the other person is a master. But actually the checking is also for happiness. That person does something and then we feel happy. So the more person keeps doing things as per our expectations and desires, the more we start to feel happy and elated, and the relationship starts to go very well. But the moment, and that's the fundamental law that we said, that the moment they change, they are unpredictable, and we are not able to hold our space of fullness and contentment, then our love for them also changes. So we have to check, where are we operating from? And never to feel that, because we are doing favor, that we are justified in having that expectation. Most of the time, that is how you say, that I did so much for you, but this is what you did, right? And don't you see? But true love will never change in spite of whatever. Because a sensible, a wise person knows that everything and everyone is changing. So, yes, go ahead, Patricia.
I just had a comment. I was always taught that it's in giving that you receive. And sometimes I wonder, am I doing this for myself or the other person?
Yeah, so a good way to check is this, whether we are deriving any happiness, or if our emotions change based on how they accept that deed from us or don't accept it, right? So
Yeah.
if you are just giving out of the fact that you are full and you just want to share, then you will be happy either ways, whether they throw that lunch in the bin or they appreciate and they praise you, does not matter. So that's what I was saying. When they throw it in the bin, that's when it starts to prick you. But if they were to eat it and appreciate you, you probably wouldn't know that actually we have created a master in a stranger as well, right? So we have to be careful about when we are starting to feel elated in a relationship, whether it is coming from space of fullness or it's because our expectations are being met.
Thank you.
All right, so let us do a short meditation before we go on to the next part of the talk. Yeah. So I will just do a simple, we'll use this simple drawing where we will focus on in our meditation on this practice or this experience of this invisible living conscient being of light, who knows that he belongs to a world that is beyond the physical, right? And we have seen this, I think all of us have seen this. So beyond the physical world, so there is a physical reality, there is a body, in my case Kanupriya, a role that is being played, Kanupriya's role, and there are various relationships that Kanupriya has, and it is easy to see the whole thing as temporary, as a temporary play which has a beginning and an end. But for the living conscient being who's invisible, that invisible one has an option to experience the world beyond, the world that is changeless, where this being of light is immortal. And this being of light can see that he comes into this physical world play for a short period of time. And he's aware that he actually needs nothing from that play because he's immortal. He exists forever. And just like him, all other living beings of light, they are also immortal. And that brings such sweetness into the relationship. Because the relationship does not end with the end of the body, but the relationship is also eternal. So we come into that space of eternity, immortality, and the security that comes along. We feel full, content. There is nothing to lose when something changes. Because this invisible, living, conscient being of light he belongs to the supreme source of love, child of that supreme Father. We see that the love of the Supreme is unconditional, does not change. For me, does not change. No matter how many mistakes I make, no matter what I do or don't do, love of the Supreme is selfless, altruistic. And I feel full content with that love. When I feel full and content, it's easy for me to come into interaction with others in that state of fullness, where I'm giving with freedom, no expectations. I see each one as a beautiful, noble being of light, who's also immortal, eternal. true love sets the self free from expectations and the other also free. To do what they would like. And that is the right foundation for any relationship. Om Shanti. So, when we saw that this discovery of a very noble mindset for us, when we start to connect with our original true self, that full state, it makes us come into this noble mindset where we start to see good in everything. And we don't come into this state of self-pity or feeling of a victim. And these are like the lowest denominations in any society, feeling like a beggar, asking for things. And this is where the homework needs to be done. This separation between the physical and the non-physical, what is unpredictable, and what is changeless, right? If we are to see this separation clearly again and again, do that homework for 1 minute, 2 minutes during the day, it helps us. It helps us come into this noble mind space where we are able to accept change, not just accept, but we are able to be our own masters and not give that control to someone else. And just by changing this inner posture, we come into healthy interactions with others. We start to genuinely love the other person. And by loving the other person, we are loving that being of light, not going by what role they are playing. And many times we feel that, when we are in this mode of a beggar, then many times others' problems also we take on as our problem. So, but when we are in this space of being a master, a self-sovereign, right? A master, self-master, then master of the self, then we start to really distinguish between the two, that what is others' problem and what is my problem. So to give an example, if someone is a miser, right, then many times we start to complain because we think that we come into this self-pity mode that, that person is being a miser towards me, but he is a miser by nature, right? So, or that is his habit. So that is his problem. That is none of my problem. He has to deal with it. But in a relationship which is based on being the other person, the miser being the master, and I have an expectation that he should not be a miser, then I'm creating complication for myself by having that expectation. So I'm going on begging and, feeling like a victim if he's a miser. But now let us see if the same situation, if I approach from a state of fullness, then I can be in a state where I'm able to, in fact, have gratitude that in spite of him being a miser, he did not create any problems for me yet, right? So I can appreciate that about him, for example, right? So same situation, you start to see very differently, or the same relationship, you start to feel very differently once the inner posture is changed, the mindset is changed. And this noble mindset helps us discover that. That noble mindset is definitely based on the inner fullness, the relationship with ourselves, and the feeling of being absolutely secure with ourselves, that living conscient being of light, right? So this is something that we have to work on for ourselves. So, to definitely know that we cannot fix the world outside, right? And it is also wise to not put all our cards in one basket, right? That is another problem that we are creating for ourselves, that we start to create these dependencies in relationships by creating bondages and attachments or dependencies in just one relationship or maybe a few relationships, right? We become so sort of subservient in a few relationships. But in a noble mindset, we start to see that with a variety of relationships, right? Life is more than one relationship. So to experience that richness in relationships, we can have many relationships, and all the relationships, when based on this inner fullness, then that true love can be experienced and also given to in all the relationships. We are not creating masters in relationships in that way. So to check for ourselves that, are we depending too much on one or two or few relationships? Then also, then we are not in that highest state of awareness for ourselves. So a person with a noble mindset will have equal love for everyone, not a preference for someone or other. So unconditional love, equal love for everyone, because one is seeing that that beautiful being of light behind, the actual living being behind every human being. So relationships become very beautiful with everyone. So the beauty of noble mindset, right? So noble mindset can have relationships with everyone, and also know that we don't try to fix others, but fix ourselves, right? So does it sound like a lot of work, fixing ourselves? Yes, Patricia is smiling. Yes. It is easy. Raj Yoga says that it is very, very easy. Just this 1 minute, 2 minute, coming into the space, it becomes extremely easy for us to experience this inner fullness. Right? Zoila is saying, I guess that's why we try to fix others, because it's harder to fix ourselves. I wouldn't agree with this. We feel that it is easier to fix others, but actually it's the easiest to fix ourselves. We all know, no, the more we tell others, do this way, do this, they just move away from us. It's a guaranteed formula for people to move away from us. So the only thing and only a person that we can change is ourselves. And within ourselves, just knowing these few things about the true self and loving the true self, that will make all the difference in the relationships. Then we wouldn't even want to change others. Because variety brings more joy in life, right? More color to life. Is that right? If everybody was like me or you, would you enjoy life? No, right? So to discover
I
that,
think I think it would be kind of boring.
very boring, yeah. So that a variety of in relationships, to be able to enjoy every relationship, that is very much possible when we discover that noble mindset. Yeah. All right, so moving on to a little bit more on true love, right? So I will tell you a story of John and Ludo. Okay, Ludo is a dog, and so I hope this looks like a dog somewhat. Does it?
If you label it dog, it will know
Yeah.
it's a dog.
All right.
There you go.
And John, so Ludo is a pet of John. So now when John is at home, right? Ludo plays with John all the time and hugs him. And when he goes out in the garden with a ball, Ludo will run out and play ball with him, right? And this is before COVID days, when John used to go every day to office. Ludo would know that this is John's footsteps, right? And the time that he would come back, he wouldn't even ring the bell at the door, but Ludo would already know that this is John. And, as soon as he's home, he will jump on him and love him, hug him. So even at times when the phone rings, right, Ludo would know that this is John's call, and it will go near the phone and sit beside the phone. So Ludo loves John. Now, one time John has to travel for work outside of the city. So now Ludo is missing John, right? Because there's no one to play ball with now. So what happens? There is a shoe, John's shoe, which is in the shoe rack. So when it is time for John to come back from office, but now John is not there in the city, so at that time Ludo will go and hug the shoe, John's shoe, right? And think as if it is John. And he will hug that shoe, he will lick that shoe, will play with that shoe, thinking that it is John. So, but when John is back from from back home, then again he starts to play with John again. So the shoe acts as a substitute. Right? When John is not visible for Ludo, there is love, but who is he loving, right? Is he loving the real John, or when John becomes invisible, he starts to love the shoe of John? Something similar has happened to us. So in this physical world, we all have shoes, right? When what is the shoe? Anyone? So we are these invisible points of light. That is the real us, the living conscient being. And then we take a body. We come into this physical world play, we take a body that is like the shoe. The moment we start to feel, because we can't see the invisible one, we start to love the shoe. And the real love for the real being who's immortal is lost in that case. So to see the separation between the shoe and the real being, that is all that we have to do to discover that noble mindset, to discover true love for each one. Each living being is very beautiful, right? Is it clear? Who are we loving? The shoe? No? Is it easy to love the real John? A real John is the real being, right? But in this case, because it is invisible, sometimes it takes us some work to start seeing. Of course, we start with the self. First, we start to see the self as this invisible being of light who does not belong in this physical world, but belongs to a world beyond the physical world. Of course, there is some role or part to play in the physical world, but that we see as temporary, as changing. Not just for us, but for everyone around us, all relationships also changing. But the one who's real, who's living, he's immortal. He's changeless. He's always loving. Just seeing that again and again. Just imagine if you knew that you would, sometimes we feel that we visit a city and, we can do some mischief there, right? And then forget about it. We know that we'll never visit that city again, never meet that person again, right? But in real life, that is not the case. If I were to know that I have to, spend my life or, meet a person again and again, I'll be very careful in that relationship. I would, take deal in that relationship with a lot of love, care, right? I wouldn't be mischievous or careless in the relationship, right? I would pay attention to that relationship. the one that is long-term, long-lasting, right? Okay, Summer has a question. May I ask, how do we know that we are loving the right source? Do you mean source as in what we are calling the supreme source, or we are loving the right being? Just to know that one way to check is, are we taking any offense or giving any offense to anyone at any time, despite what their behavior is like with us? So the moment we come into this space of giving offense, taking offense, then we are not loving the right living being of light. And the truth about each living being is that they are all very noble. So just like in a play, the real actor has different personality and characteristics, and what they project in the play, or the act that they are playing in the play, is very different. So so if Mary is playing the role of Cinderella, right? Cinderella's characteristics may be very different, personality may be very different from Mary's characteristics, right? So something like that. Are we loving Mary or we are loving Cinderella? It is that kind of distinction has to be clear in our minds, that this invisible being of light, the soul, is very noble, worthy of love. But when we start to see and love Cinderella or the shoe, in the example that I gave, right? Then we start to complicate things for ourselves and others, right? So that is why for us to come into that awareness of who we really are, and to discover this noble mindset, to discover our true life, which is invisible, life based on immortality. There is no survival instinct there. There is immortality there. There's absolute safety. We feel insured and protected. Nothing changes. In that mindset, we are able to deal with unpredictability of the play. We don't know what is going to happen next in Cinderella with Cinderella, right? So to be able to accept and even appreciate everything that's happening in the Cinderella play, we have to discover our own fullness, our own richness inside. Then we are not asking like a beggar, that Cinderella should behave this way or that way. Or this is how the drama, the plays of Cinderella should shape up, right? This should be the next episode, the scene. Then there are no desires like that, expectations like that. We are able to accept whatever happens in the Cinderella play as it is. And even clap when the Cinderella play is over, right? Clap, appreciate. So we just have to rediscover our own fullness and that noble mindset to come into a space of true love in relationships. Yes. And that is easy, very easy to do.
Any other questions? Because I know we are coming up on our time in a few minutes. Any other questions? or comments? Come back and talk more about this subject.
Yeah, this is a subject which intrigues all of us, right? But this is a nice starting point, right? To start with the self, to start with discovering, not the, to disregard the beggar, to stop or to stop the beggar in ourselves, to discover the prince within ourselves, the fullness. Then it is all very easy.
All right. So I think Kanupriya Ben, we are coming up on our time. And so I think we're coming up on our time.
Yes.
All right.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So before we'll do some closing announcements, and then Kanupriya Ben, do you think you could do a 1-minute closing with us, or 2-minute reflection closing?
Okay, sure.
All right. So this was a very in-depth topic, and I know we covered a lot. We are recording the session, so if you're interested in a copy, just send us an email and we'll send you a copy of it for your own review, not to post it anywhere. We just request that. We have workshops coming up next Saturday through the rest of this month, August and September. We've already got that scheduled, so please, we invite you to come back each Saturday, but also feel free to invite others. So just anyone that you think might be interested, feel free to share the invitation with them, or give us their email address and we can include them on our weekly email list. And if you're interested in taking the foundation course in Raj Yoga meditation, let us know and we will get that started up also. But thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand it back to Sister Kanupriya to close us out with just like a 2-minute reflection, so we can just process everything that we've been talking about, listening to, and reflecting on. Om Shanti.
Shanti. So we choose a comfortable sitting posture and just make sure that the back is upright, and keeping the mind alert. And a relaxed posture, breathing gently, normally. And we take this minute to start with the highest awareness. And we start with coming into the experience of what is invisible. Seeing the self as a point of light. The self who is immortal. Self who is perfect. Invisible but perfect. Full. Content. This invisible being of light is the real, living, conscient being. Who has no end. beautiful, noble being, worthy of love. And with this noble mindset, it is easy to come into interaction with others with an attitude of giving, sharing. Not being a beggar. Not creating expectations is natural for one who's full. So we stay in this space for the rest of the day. Om Shanti.
All right, so thank you everyone for joining us. And